Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hello and welcome to the Dork Forest. It's me, Jackie Cation. You know the websites, JackieCation.com, DorkForest.com, TheDorkForest.com if you like a determiner. You can donate to the show using PayPal or Venmo. You go to the websites, you find out where I'm doing stand-up comedy. Rangers of the Dork Forest, I love you dearly, and thank you so much. Feel free to go to Apple, rate and review the show. 5 stars would be great. Let's do the credits. Mike Ruekberg sang and wrote that song that you just heard, and he will be singing at the end, the Mexican Hat Dance. Patrick Brady is going to fix this audio and video, and we thank all the stars for that. Let's get into the show. Hi, Jackie Cation using a new interface for the Dork Forest. Rangers, feel free to email me and tell me that it's great or it sucks. Jackie at JackieCation.com. Rangers, we have with us a man with an amazing name, and then he went into stand-up comedy. His name is Glen Tickle. And it's spelled like tickle, and it's named after somewhere in England that was a tick L. Something's happening there. Don't ask him. He's answered it enough. But he's got a new album out. Maybe he'll address it on his new special and album. September 15th, Glen Tickle against the World Crime League, which sounds like he belongs on this show. Welcome to the Dork Forest, Glen Tickle.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a delight to be here. I should have
Right.
probably said this part before we started recording, but you are genuinely one of my favorite comedians, and it's a real treat to get to talk.
No, I think we should get it recorded for sure. Yeah, it's definitely should have that written down somewhere.
You're breaking up a little bit. I don't think the internet connection
course I
could
am.
handle the compliment.
I've turned everything off because I was told to by Riverside.fm. So we'll see what happens. It's recording
Now
separately.
I just see the letter J. You're back.
Perfect. So here's what I want you to do, Glenn. Just feel free to pontificate and talk to me how great Buckaroo Banzai is for the next hour. I say do it. Own the space. But let me tell people it's at Glen Tickle, GlenTickle. So, and it's glentickle.com.
Just like
so,
Damo Doll.
I've never seen Buckaroo Banzai.
Most people haven't. You're not alone.
But 1984, I was there.
Yeah.
I should have seen it.
I was too, but I was a baby, so I didn't see it in theaters. Most of the people that I know who have seen it and really also like it just have like fond memories of it from childhood or whatever. I didn't see it until 5 years ago. It was shortly after my second daughter was born. She wasn't sleeping through the night yet, or still. She's 5 now. She still doesn't sleep good. But I was up at like 4 a.m, just exhausted, just trying to find something to watch while I'm sitting there trying to rock a baby to sleep. And then I saw it come up on whatever streaming service, and it's like, oh, I've heard of that movie. I've never seen it. It seems like something I would probably like. So I started watching it, and it's very confusing, but like 15 minutes in, I decided that it is the greatest movie I've ever seen, and that it's my favorite movie now, and that I love it so much. Because there's a part, so Buckaroo Banzai is a particle physicist, rocket scientist, musician, and brain surgeon, all of the things that one
and
strives
RoboCop.
for.
And for
Yes,
some
and
reason, also RoboCop.
This is, it might be apocryphal, but I've heard that this is the movie that got him RoboCop.
Why wouldn't it?
Why? You need the chin. That's all you need in a RoboCop, because that's all you see. And he's got one of those. So they're like, yep, put him in the suit. And it was 15 minutes in. So his band, the Hong Kong Cavaliers, made up of all of his scientist friends who help him have wacky adventures. They're doing a concert in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and everyone's loving it. All the extras are dancing in the best 80s fashion that they could pull together. And then Buckaroo shuts the show down, like mid-song. He's like, no, stop. Because one person in the crowd isn't having a good time. And as a comedian, I'm like, I don't think I've ever related to anything harder on screen than immediately just driving everything else that's going well into the ground to be like, why aren't you liking this more? Hey, no, everyone pay attention to this person. We're going to figure out why they're not laughing harder.
Yes.
Yeah. And that sets off like one of many storylines in the movie, because the woman not having a good time is his dead wife's twin sister. And
oh my God! And how did
so
she
they have
happen to
figure
be at
out-
the? Why was she at the concert?
It's
Was she
never
looking
really
for him?
explained.
Oh, there we go.
No,
Yeah.
she
It
does.
had-
She brings a gun into the concert and tries to kill herself because things aren't going great for Penny Pretty. And
Okay.
but she
Her
gets
name's
arrested
Penny
because
Pretty.
people think she's trying to assassinate Buckaroo Banzai.
Okay. And she's
but-
Ellen Barkin, the original
Barkin.
Squinty McClintock.
Yes.
Before Renee Zellweger, there was Ellen Barkin. And she was in a movie that I've only read the Wikipedia. I read the Wikipedia because I saw on the internet that this came out in 1984. I was sentient. I was watching really shitty movies in 1980. I was there for this. I should have been. And
You should
I
have
told
been.
Andy, yeah, I do a bonus at the end of the show where I talk to my husband, Andy Ashcraft, who literally, when I told him that the show was about Buckaroo Banzai today, 15 minutes of him talking about Buckaroo Banzai. I was like, oh, I didn't know it was also your dorkdom. And he's
I
like,
love
well,
it so
we'll be
much.
watching it. Yeah, it sounds, I was like, because I thought it might have been like that Ben Stiller fashion movie.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's what
it
he
has
said.
very little
Oh.
to do with Zoolander. I don't know
right.
why
It was. I just thought it
would
was.
think.
I thought it was purposefully silly, like Zoolander was. And
Well-
he loves Zoolander a great deal, but he's like, it's not at all like that. They wrote it completely
No.
straight, but it was directed and acted for camp. But he thinks
He
that it
knows.
was written completely straight.
I agree. There's some debate among the small community of Buckaroo Banzai enthusiasts.
The fierce,
Which is
fierce
basically just like
supporters.
me, Ken Plume, and John Hodgman. But it shows up. I have a Google alert set up for Buckaroo Banzai, so anytime it pops up in the news, I hear about it. And
there's
it
a
is
clip.
almost always. It's almost the other alert I have set up is just my own name. Those are the only two. But anytime it pops up, it is always just some list that someone has made of like, oh, bad movies from the 80s or movies you don't remember existing, or like
Right.
not necessarily flattering lists, but they all are like, oh yeah, it's like a parody of sci-fi. I'm like, no, it isn't. It is a sloppily made
sincere.
sci-fi movie that's kind of silly just by the function of they made it in 1984 with not enough money and a producer who was actively working against them.
Was the
so
producer
it com-
actively
it-
working against them?
Yeah, there's a line in the movie that I'm sure Andy will be familiar with, but at one point, Jeff Goldblum's character, New Jersey, Dr. Sidney Zweibel, is walking through a lab with one of the other Hong Kong Cavaliers, Reno, and there's a watermelon just in the lab, and Jeff Goldblum says, "Why is there a watermelon there?" And the other guy says, "I'll tell you later." And they never address it for the rest of the movie. It is never explained. And the reason that they put it there was because the producer, Sidney Beckerman, was like watching dailies and then just coming back with like, hey, this is dumb. Don't do this. I don't like his dumb red glasses. You got to change this. And eventually they thought he stopped. They hadn't heard from him for a while. And they're like, we think he gave up. Like, let's just put something weird in the scene. And if we hear about it tomorrow, he's still watching. If he's not, we can do whatever we want now. So they put the watermelon thing in there to test, and
genius.
he had stopped watching, and it's just in the movie. So when I was doing the special, I had a watermelon on stage because
Yes.
I wanted
It's
people
your favorite movie.
after the show. Yeah, and like in the comments and stuff, when I put it up on YouTube, I want to see the comment, "Why is there a watermelon there?" But then Gallagher died between when I filmed it and when it's coming out. And I'm like, people are going to think this is just a weird tribute to Gallagher.
It's a
which
tribute to
it
Gallagher.
certainly is
I
not.
can't believe I forgot that Gallagher died. You know that I once opened for Gallagher too, his brother, and because
really?
Gallagher, yeah, Gallagher. A lot of people don't know this. Gallagher syndicated his own act to one of his brothers, who
I got
looks.
a couple siblings I could send out on the road.
He looks just like Gallagher because they're brothers. They are brothers.
Yeah.
And he did Gallagher's act. Gallagher, the original, the brother, eventually sued his own brother for not doing his act correctly because he wasn't doing it verbatim. And if you're a comic, you gotta
Just
know.
a totally normal, good dude. There's nothing bad or problematic about Gallagher. Just truly a
him
legend that
wasting
everyone agrees was great.
just hundreds of pounds of food being wasted every year.
Yeah.
So in Buckaroo Banzai, there's a guy named New Jersey and a guy named Reno.
Yes. So those are the Hong Kong Cavaliers, Buckaroo's like core team. There's also the Blue Blazer Regulars, which are just like fans of Buckaroo Banzai who help him out, including a father and son team who rescue him with a helicopter at one point that they just have. It's just they hear that Buckaroo's in trouble, so the father and son team of, I forget the dad's name. Scooter Lindley is the little boy. They run a gas station / furniture store, and they just have a helicopter. So when Buckaroo's in a scrape, they just fly in there and get him.
Wow, it sounds like a Roald Dahl book. Like they just
it's a
own
really
a
hard movie to describe to people without it sounding like you don't like it. Like I want to be very clear that I love this movie very much.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where,
John
like I said,
Lithgow and Christopher Lloyd are in
guy.
it too.
Yeah, you tell people who's in this movie, and they're like, "How have I not seen it?" It's got Peter Weller, John Lithgow, Christopher Lloyd, Ellen Barkin, Jeff Goldblum, Jonathan Banks has a small role in it.
Okay,
it is a bunch of people. There's more. I'm blanking.
So
it's a stacked cast of the best 1984 had to offer.
Right. And early work. Like it might be Ellen Barkin's first big role, actually, if I remember correctly. I did read the Wikipedia, so everyone's going to want a second source. Okay. But so he's in a band, but they're also scientists. They're building a machine?
Naturally. So the opening of the movie, there's a special edition where the original opening for the movie was they had old home movies of Buckaroo as a little boy, like watching his parents do a science experiment. But then the experiment is sabotaged by the villain of the movie, Hanoi Shan, the leader of the World Crime League, who gets cut out of the movie entirely. So he kills Buckaroo's parents, and it is all narrated by Clancy Brown. Yeah.
What?
Oh, Buckaroo's mother, by the way, was Jamie Lee Curtis in a very early appearance because she was dating someone on the crew, and they were doing the scene. They're like, "Oh, can you just go stand over there and just like be a mom?" She didn't have lines or anything. She's just like waving at the camera. But that got cut because of Return of the Jedi. The producers like, "No, we got to start this with an opening crawl." So they cut that, and they just had like a block of text about Buckaroo Banzai, a character no one was familiar with.
Right.
One of the things I love about it is when you watch it, you're like, oh, there's probably 10 of these. Like, this is just like the middle. Like, I got to go back and find the other one so I can get caught up. But there's not. There's just the one. Because they wrote a bunch.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
A lot
Earl MacRouch, the writer, had like just a stack of stories about Buckaroo Banzai. And then when they made the movie, they just like picked one from the middle. And so the World Crime League, the title that I stole for my special, was going to be the title of the second one.
Okay.
So in the credits, it says, "Watch for Buckaroo's next adventure, Buckaroo Banzai against the World Crime League," but they never made the movie because no one liked it.
There was.
I'm like, oh, no one's using it? I'm going to jump on that. I'm going to grab that.
It cost $16 million
to make. But they put out
a
book.
And it made $6 million in its release. Yeah. So there was a reason, and I understand because of Star Wars that they thought that science fiction, adventure, and Indiana Jones, I'm sure, sort of serialed sequels, it was going to be huge, they thought. And
they really thought they had a hit on their hands. They did, but just like with me.
Right. Do they have that footage with the opening, the old opening?
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube, or if you have the special edition DVD, it's on there.
In Blu-ray or regular?
It is on Blu-ray.
Do you have it on Blu-ray?
I don't know if it was ever officially... I do, yeah. I have the DVD and the Blu-ray. I don't know if it was ever released on Laserdisc, but if it was, I'd love to track one down. I don't have a player, but it would be nice to have.
Right. Right. You could just frame it, stick it on the wall.
Yeah.
So for the last
hang it up.
5 years, this has been your favorite movie.
Yeah. It is. I watch it a lot of times, especially on the road. Like, I will put it on in a hotel room as I'm like falling asleep. Because I'm very cool, and when I go out and I'm touring, I'm a wild party animal who definitely doesn't just go right back to his hotel room and watch his favorite movie on his iPad and fall asleep by 11:30.
So you have a digital copy as well. I was going to ask if you had a DVD player in your laptop.
I have like a little USB drive that I keep on a keychain in case I ever like need one. Like I used to like be a computer repair tech, so like it was always just a good thing to have, and I still have one on my keychain. The only thing on it is it's the digital version of Buckaroo Banzai in case I am in an emergency, because I had to move it from something else, then I was clearing stuff off. Like, well, I'll leave it on there, just in case.
Right. Well, is it a bad idea that I have one of those and it's all of my passwords?
I mean, as long as you have a password to get in there. Then
no,
probably,
it's just a USB port. Yeah, I might. I'm going to reconsider my USB situation.
Yeah,
do you know
or
that my
probably.
pin...
I mean, it's probably fine, but I would take this part out of the episode so people don't try to get it.
No, I think I'm gonna. I'll just wipe it. But it's like one time on stage, I told people my PIN number because I thought it was funny, and then I had to change my PIN number.
Yeah,
I'm not always aware of security, is what I'm saying. It's everyone should live slightly more defensively than I do. How about that?
I had a friend tell people my computer password on stage.
Oh, good Lord!
Because and I had to. It was like just the base one, just to get into the computer, not like it wasn't the password for any of my accounts. But like if you stole my laptop, now you can get in. Because you knew that what it used to be. Because he thought it was like just the password, I think, for my router at home. And I was like, no, that's like my laptop. I got to change that one now. It's the same. It's the same one. It's always
and that
been.
Wasn't my intro, by the way, young man. And
What do you want me to say about him? Oh, tell him my computer password so they can just get into all my accounts. That would be great. I feel like it would help me really connect with the audience.
Now I digress, but as per usual. I've probably told this story before. Pete Lee, one of the younger guys, came under me at Minneapolis comedy scene. Very funny. In New York, lived in New York for many years, and his router in his apartment was named Panera Bread, and it was the slowest roll of a joke ever. It took him. He said he was in the elevator like a year and a half later. And a guy said to him, "Do you know there's a Panera around here? I've never been able to..." And he was like, "I am finally vindicated."
I remember,
was like, that is the slowest
when people
joke.
started getting, when people started getting routers in their homes, there would be like screenshots going around of people changing the name of their router to have like petty fights with neighbors. Like that's my favorite stuff. Right?
Yeah, that was actually very funny. I was like, "Oh, you're not wrong."
There was one that was like, "Hey, trash day is Tuesday." I was like, "Yep, that's what I want out of a router."
Cut your lawn. Starting an HOV, cut your lawn, and those HOVs are. I hate those things. Anyway,
same.
So I need but he's created a device, right? There's like a and it isn't a device that anyone needs. It's just
it's not. It's one of those things where it's like I don't think anyone was asking him to do this, but it's
unique.
When you watch the regular edition of the movie, a lot of it doesn't make a ton of sense. But I think the scene that they cut like adds so much in terms of like why anyone is doing anything they're doing in the movie, because the experiment that his parents are doing in that clip is the experiment he does where he crosses the 8th dimension. So he's doing it to like complete his parents' work, which is not addressed at all. He just drives a car real fast through a mountain, and then there's like weird footage of shots from electron microscopes just like flying at his face. And it's like, oh yeah, neat. I guess that's a
it's
cool
another
thing you did.
watermelon.
And
That's what that is.
yeah, he's the most famous person in the world. It's like a running. It's not a joke, but it is like a running thing in the movie where people will see him and they'll be like, Buckaroo Banzai? What? Like somebody will just bump into him in a hallway and they'll be like, hey, that's Buckaroo Banzai, and like everyone knows who this dude is. He's the most famous person in the world. All his scientist friends are on TV like immediately after the jet car eighth dimension experiment, like talking about it. He has to have a press conference with the Secretary of Defense, and then the aliens try to steal the device so that they can get back to Planet 10, where they're from. So that's John Lithgow, Christopher Lloyd. Those are the bad aliens, but then good aliens are trying to help stop that from happening.
Well, here's the weird thing. Now, in Wikipedia, it said that aliens sort of like suctioned onto his car as he went through. And was that all four of the aliens? Was that all of the aliens?
No. So there's a little alien ball that like sticks to the undercarriage of the jet car, and he shows that in the press conference. And the other aliens, the other aliens arrived on Earth, obviously, during the War of the Worlds broadcast, because this is honestly my least favorite part of the movie. This is the thing where I'm like, that's actually pretty dumb. So it's during the War of the Worlds broadcast, they hypnotized Orson Welles.
Yep.
Yeah, they hypnotized Orson Welles to then after they're saying the broadcast was real. Someone was just describing an alien invasion, and then they hypnotized Orson Welles to be like, no, we were just doing a fun little radio play. Don't worry about it. It's totally fine. And that worked. So all the aliens are just in New Jersey. They're all named John, and they just have a variety of weird last names, which is also something I relate to.
Right. They're all of
so
their
John
names
Warfarin, that's... Yeah, there's not a John Tickle in there, but I feel like there should be. But there's John Warfarin is the alien leader. That's John Lithgow. But John Lithgow is also an Italian scientist trying to do the same experiment as Buckaroo's parents. So he's trying to cross the dimensional barrier. But he only gets part way through. He gets stuck literally halfway through a wall. His little legs are kicking out. And then the aliens grab him in there. So the leader possesses John Lithgow. So he comes out of the wall and he's completely insane at that point, and he just runs away screaming. And then we see that was around the same time his parents got killed. And then in the future, he's just in an insane asylum in New Jersey with Jonathan Banks as the orderly.
Okay.
So then he sees that Buckaroo Banzai has crossed the dimensional barrier. So he sees it. He's like, now's our chance. Now we can get back to Planet 10. We have to steal this thing from Buckaroo Banzai. So he breaks out. He meets up with his alien friends, and then they try to get it back. They end up kidnapping Ellen Barkin at the press conference because she's there for some reason. Buckaroo gets her released from prison. She's arrested for trying to kill him. He goes to visit her in prison, realizes this is my dead wife's twin sister. Just tells the prison, they're like, it's fine. I'm just going to bring her with us if that's cool. And they're like, yeah, you're the most famous person in the world. It's the 80s. You can just have a lady. So they just send her off with him. And
now, wait a minute.
He brings her to the press conference. Yes.
I have a question that we're going to have to take after.
Sure.
I'm going to try and do an ad here. Let's find out if it works, Rangers.
Okay.
We're back. Was there an ad? Did I tell you to do something? Maybe you did it. Anyway, I'm here with Glen Tickle, by the way, and Glen Tickle is GlenTickle, and it's at Glen Tickle everywhere. And he's got a new album coming out, new special coming out on his YouTube, but it's so if you go to glentickle.com, you'll find out all about it. But it's September 15th, and it's called Glen Tickle Against the World Crime League, which is vaguely named after the movie Buckaroo Banzai. There is a line in it that, and it's his favorite movie, you guys. Why do I feel like I'm going to get a lot of emails going, he's right. It's the greatest movie that was ever made.
I went through Like, I've listened to your show, and I went through, like, I did the search. I'm like, somebody else has got to been on here to talk about Buckaroo Banzai before. Like, but it wasn't, and I was pleasantly surprised. I had, like, backups, but I was really excited to talk about this
Was
one
it top
because I don't
secret?
get a lot of opportunities. Is what?
I always think it's...
was the backup top secret? I do love top secret.
Some people
also
love
really
Top
good.
Secret. It's a movie that is also beloved. Here's my question. So nobody, and granted, this is a scriptwriter thing, but nobody thought to themselves, well, why don't we just ask if we could use the interdimensional thing? He can bring us home, and then he can keep going. Like John Lithgow didn't think, oh, let's just borrow it. I mean, we're going to borrow it, or ask him if he can.
Right.
Why do they have to steal it?
Great question. Because Buckaroo would say, no, you can't do that, because if I let you do that, then the other aliens are going to blow up the whole world, or they're going to get humans to blow up the world. So the bad aliens are the red lectroids, and the good aliens, I mean, they are threatening to destroy the Earth, so I guess good by comparison.
Okay.
They are the black lectroids, and their leader, John Emdahl, sends a hologram to Buckaroo that says, hey, if John Warfarin gets his hands on this thing and he comes back to Planet 10, we are going to start World War III by launching an attack on Kaminsk, and then that would start World War III because Russia thinks you guys are going to do it, and then you guys are going to think Russia did it, and then everybody's going to blow everybody up. So they
When
can't
did War
let
Games
John
come out?
Warfarin get this thing. Probably around the same time. There was something else pretty recently had basically that plot where it's like, oh, if you don't do this thing I want, I am going to trick the whole world into blowing itself up. And it's like, yeah, I've seen this one before.
It was Secret Invasion. It was Marvel's Secret Invasion.
Yes, it was.
That was exact. It was War Games. It was the plot of War Games.
Yeah,
and I
it had
thoroughly
aliens.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was.
Yep. Yeah.
It was
Talos.
It could have been
and the
more
Skrulls.
like Buckaroo Banzai. That would have been my only critique. If it was
could have
more
been-
like Buckaroo Banzai, I would have liked it more.
If it could have been a little more like War Games.
But
no,
yeah, because the lectroids, they don't shapeshift, but they like emit a gas that like tricks people's brains into just seeing them as humans.
Okay.
And then you
What
can
do they
wear
really
like
look
scuba
like?
gear. They look like guys in rubber masks. Is what they look like. But it's like pretty classic, like gray, like big eye alien guys. They got weird long rubber fingers, but they're in suits and they just have a mask and gloves on. It is pretty ridiculous. The aliens all dress insane in this movie. It's great.
Do they dress very 80s hipster, or do they dress just like old school suits and ties? Or some hybrid of the two?
The three guys, like Christopher Lloyd, John Big Booty, and the other two like main bad guys who work with John Lithgow, they just have suits on most of the time. The good guy aliens will just like walk around their spaceship in like a big feather boa and like very shiny like unitard, like pretty classic sci-fi stuff, except for the feather boa. That's unusual.
And that-
the ones
that's,
he's
I
got
think,
like a
what
big
made me
straw
think
hat
about-
on.
Yeah.
It is. It just looks like in E.T. where they're trying to disguise E.T. as like a old lady, and they just
Right.
put on whatever they could find. But it's that,
Yeah.
but for the whole race of aliens. And they're like, we need to just pretend that we're normal humans, and they just did a bad job of it.
Well, it was very popular, the feather boa, in 1984. I think it might have been David Bowie's fault. We don't know. It could have
For a
been.
resurgence, I think.
And so, okay, so is it successful? Do they? What happens next? This is a big spoiler, you guys. A movie that happened
Sure.
600 years ago. Okay.
If you've not seen it in the last 40 years, this is now your fault, not mine. So they do succeed in kidnapping Penny Pretty, who has the device, the oscillation overthruster, which is the thing on my shirt right now.
Okay, how big is
So
it?
they
Bigger than a
have
bread
it,
basket?
but don't. This is probably a little bigger than actual size in the movie. It's like a handheld thing. You like snap into your car that can go very fast.
Okay.
It is the reason by the same designers built Buckaroo's jet car that built the DeLorean in Back to the Future.
Okay.
So the fact that it has to go 88 miles per hour is a reference to Buckaroo Banzai because it's the like code handle for the thing is HB88.
Okay.
Because 8 and 8 looked like B and B, I think was the reasoning. I don't
Okay.
fully understand why, but
Sure.
it also had the same costume designer as Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So at the end of the movie, like the end credits, they're all like dance walking to the Banzai March. But when they recorded it, it was to Billy Joel's Uptown Girl, and they're just like dancing through the L.A. River, and he is dressed fully as Pee Wee Herman, like Glen plaid suit, bow tie, white shoes. He's just dressed like Pee Wee Herman.
I think I saw the
Jeff
trailer.
Goldblum's character. Yeah, that was probably in the trailer. Jeff Goldblum's character, New Jersey, shows up in a very similar outfit to the one where Pee-wee is disguising himself as a cowboy, but like everything doesn't really fit right and it looks ridiculous. He's got like a big red shirt. That's what Jeff Goldblum is wearing for a big chunk of the movie. And
Wow.
I'm convinced that it's because Buckaroo Banzai is the movie that the studio makes about Pee-wee's life in Pee-wee's Big Adventure that they all watch at the drive-in.
Okay.
Like, that's Buckaroo Banzai, because you see James Brolin rolls in on the motorcycle in that suit, and that's what Buckaroo's wearing when he's riding a motorcycle in the movie. And I think I'm correct on this. I think I'm.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny that everybody works on everything. And you can see the crossovers if you follow the credits. It's one reason, Rangers, to look deeply into the credits of any film. Because you're like, oh, that guy worked on the never-ending story. And now here we are with a giant puppet dog. What I need to know is, so he goes through, he makes it through, he ends up with the glob of alien.
Yes.
Then all of a sudden...
That doesn't really factor into the story as much. He just shows it at the press conference, and they're like, neat, all right. And then the aliens kidnap Ellen Barkin.
Ellen Barkin. Okay, and then what about... So even the blob doesn't go back. The blob doesn't take over another person's body, and maybe that's a different adventure.
No, yeah, I'm trying to remember. I don't think it is... After the press conference scene, I do not think the blob comes up again. I think maybe one of the Hong Kong Cavaliers grabs it. I don't think they just leave it in a hotel conference room. But when they're giving the press conference, it is like 8 reporters. 3 of them are secretly aliens. And then the aliens have to, like, the good aliens electrocute Buckaroo Banzai over the phone so that he can see who the bad aliens are. Like, they live. Like, he can tell who's a good guy and who's a bad guy.
Sure.
But then they have to finish the press conference because a motorcycle convention has booked the room next. So they're like, we don't have a lot of time for all this science. All these Harley Davidson guys are going to be here. And that is just like set up so that Buckaroo can just steal a motorcycle and chase the bad guys.
Right. Because they take his car.
They take Ellen Barkin, and then he has to chase them down. They're in a van with her. And at this point, the look of the movie takes a sharp turn because they had initially hired the cinematographer from Blade Runner. So a lot of the movie looks really great. Like the concert scene that I talked about is shot by the guy who shot Blade Runner. Looks beautiful. And then he left for whatever reason, and they hired someone else who... So there's scenes of the movie that look like they're just straight out of an episode of The A-Team, where it's like day for night,
flat.
just like
Yeah,
and it's that's where it happens in the movie. It's like after that chase scene, everything just kind of looks bad from here on out, because that's also there's like a big spaceship chase at the end of the movie, but it is like 50s sci-fi. We're dangling this on a string in front of a backdrop and like just bopping it along, and it doesn't. doesn't
They
look
ran out of
excellent.
I think they might have run out of cash from the sound of it.
Yeah,
maybe the
And
Blade
like
Runner
I said,
guy.
the producer was giving them a bunch of problems during production, and when I first saw this movie and I started like looking into it more, I was like, oh, that producer, he really mucked things up. But then I like stuck with it and I learned more about it, and I watched like W.D. Richter, the director. He wrote Big Trouble in Little China. He only directed one other feature, and it is worse and more forgettable than this one that most people don't like or know about. I think
What
it's
is
called
it called?
Late to Dinner.
Okay.
Late to Dinner, I'm pretty sure. But it's two guys who accidentally do a light bit of kidnapping in the 60s, get frozen by a scientist, and then come back 20 years later. It's the 90s now. It is a very early Janine Garofalo appearance.
What's the name of the writer?
W.D. Richter.
Okay.
Directed Buckaroo Banzai, wrote Big Trouble in Little China. I think somebody else might have written this bad Late to Dinner movie, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. There's like a bad version of it on YouTube where the sound cuts out for a couple minutes at a time, a few points during it. But you don't really feel like when it happens, you're not like, oh, I wonder what they're saying. It doesn't matter. It's not good. It's not good. But his other stuff, he does a bit still to this day, because they did a novelization of the sequel, World Against the World Crime League, that came out in I think 2021. It's rough. I love the movie so much, but it took me so long to get through this book. Where I got the print edition, like pre-ordered it, picked it up the day it came out, was so excited. Had a real hard time getting through it. So then I got the audiobook when that came out. It is 24 hours long. It is a full day to listen to the audiobook.
How many pages is it? Is it like...
It is too many. So I have the novelization of the original, Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. That's like a pretty slim read. And I liked reading it because it has stuff that got cut out of the movie. It was written by the writer of the movie, Earl MacRouch, so it wasn't like somebody adapting it. It was like, here's some stuff that we couldn't fit in the movie, and it like adds a lot to one's viewing experience. But then World Crime League came out. It is like 4 times as long, and it is just like, oh, he's just been writing this every day since 1984 and just has not stopped until
Same writer,
now,
though,
almost 40 years
Macro.
later. Yes.
The MacRouch?
Yeah,
Okay.
Earl MacRouch. And it's like every idea, like an 8th grader who is like getting into like occult stuff, like everything like Leonard Nimoy talked about on TV in the 70s, like it's like, oh, the Knights Templar, all of that is in there, but in no real cohesive way.
It
took me months to get through the audiobook.
Yeah, I have 2 stories to tell you regarding audiobooks versus the written word versus a filmed version, and it is Game of Thrones. I heard about it, heard there was a dragon, and so I tried to read it. I made it through the first 80 pages the first time I tried to read it. I bought it on Audible because I couldn't do it, and I listened to the first probably 2 hours. And then I went back to the book, got about 160 pages in, and then I watched the first episode of the TV show, and I was like, not a chance. It's not going to happen. Because I need, there's a couple of things that I don't enjoy that a lot of people really like. Like, I don't like a sort of a political, like, soap opera, which is what Game of Thrones is.
Sure. You don't like machinations.
Right. Yeah. And I don't like it when I can tell immediately that the bad guys are going to win. And a lot of the good guys are going to die, if not all of them. And so, like, I read the first 3 Dune books. There's another 7 Dune books, but it's all politics.
There's a lot of Dune books.
Yeah. I can't do. I'm happy for those who enjoy the Dune series, but I am not the one that this was made for. And
No.
Did you ever read Patrick Rothfuss?
I don't think so.
He essentially maxed his D&D character from childhood, and Hey Siri, what's the name of that Patrick Rothfuss book? Name of the Wind, I think it's called. Name of the Wind. Yes,
I think I've heard of it. I've not read it.
The first one I read, and I enjoyed it because I play D&D and I enjoy the guy who's the best bard, and then he's the best thief, and he's the best ranger, and he's the best, and then now he's telling the story from being the best bartender, but he went to sorcery school and he was the best sorcerer. But so I read that and I enjoyed it, and then I tried to read the second book, and I was like, oh, it's the same book, and I can't, I don't care anymore, and he's still not in the present. So I didn't like that so much, but I did like the first book. I just wanted him to eventually go out and fight whatever evil was right outside of his bar, and
Right.
it didn't happen. But it would probably make a very good TV show or movie. Now, I've digressed. These are the two things. So the guy who wrote the original screenplay wrote he just gave you the rest of the adventures. He gave us, the public.
Yeah, so there's I think there's a list in the novelization of the movie that like just names a bunch of other adventures because it's written from the perspective of Reno, the least interesting character in the movie.
Played by?
Does almost nothing. I forget. Pepe.
Not one of the famous?
He's done other things. I'm blanking on his name.
Okay.
But he is like the guy. He's like the secretary of the Hong Kong Cavaliers.
Okay.
He's the one who tells Jeff Goldblum he'll tell him later why watermelon's there.
Okay.
But other than that, does very little in the movie. He's like the one telling you the story in the book, in both, and it feels a little bit like reading the Wikipedia page.
Okay.
The
So
movie.
he's telling instead of showing the story, he's
point.
telling you the story. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And then in the second book, it is all over the place. Buckaroo does travel through the other dimensions at one point. He literally meets Jesus, Einstein, Gandhi, all at the same time. They're all just hanging out, and they're like, oh, it's our friend Buckaroo Banzai, who we all admire, of course. And when I was reading it, it's like, oh, this is probably like symbolic. And then like the next sentence is almost literally like, this is not symbolic. This is happening. And it's like, oh, okay. You're just working through a lot of stuff, huh, bud? But I heard I have no basis on this, but somebody was trying to convince me that Earl MacRouch is not a real guy. That W.D. Richter wrote it and then just like has his friend pretend to be the guy because he thought it made it more interesting, which sounds like an insane thing. But to this day, W.D. Richter in interviews, like when they were plugging the novel for World Crime League, acts like Buckaroo Banzai is a real guy. He refers to the movie as a docudrama. He says, like, this is made with permission by the Banzai Institute. Like, we've worked with Reno directly to get the most reliable accounts of this information. And we're like, yeah, but it's not, though, is the thing. Like, we all know it isn't. It's
right.
You've been doing this weird bit for 40 years, and I love the commitment. But, like, do you not know that it's
Does he?
like I was saying before, you find out that the producer didn't get along with them and he was making it hard, and you're like, oh, that producer. But now it's like, you might have been the problem, WD. You might have been genuinely difficult to work
Have
with.
you read any biographies of W.D. Richter?
No, I don't know that there are any. I would love to write the biography of W.D. Richter.
I would like to know that there is at least somebody following around scribbling the fact that this guy might think that things are real. And then he wrote the Chinatown, he wrote
Big
that
Trouble in
other
Little
movie,
China. Yeah.
Big Trouble in
Which
Little China, the other movie that Andy loves more than life itself.
That is one that
like-
people do really love. That misses me every time I try to watch it. I don't get that.
That wasn't for you. So, but it's written and directed by W.D. Richter as well, correct?
No, that was written by W.D. Richter, directed by James Cameron. Carpenter.
Yeah,
okay. Not Cameron.
Oh, wow.
two very different directors that I just conflated
yes,
there.
but both famous.
But he didn't. He W.D. Richter did the rewrite of the movie that they shot because it was like apparently originally I think a Western. Like it changed a lot. Like draft to draft, they kept bringing people on, and then they're like, oh, this is nonsense. Like this is unfilmable at this point. Let's just forget it. And then they gave W.D. Richter a shot, and he's like, what if he's a truck driver and everything's weird and all Asian people have magic powers? They're like, hell yeah, here's a bunch of money. Let's make this movie.
These two movies feel like proof that there's so much money in Los Angeles that all you have to do is meet the right person. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah well, I'll give you at least $4 million. I know a guy. And then you do it. You do it. See what it looks like. I'll look at the dailies and we'll see if we can get some more money for you. And it's literally because, that's nuts that was made.
Yeah, I have so many friends who genuinely like really love that movie, and then when I tell them like, oh, the guy who wrote it is the one who made my favorite movie, and they're like, I don't want to watch that. I have friends who have tried to watch it for the first time recently, and I've just been like dealing with a good number of texts from people being like, I don't know, man. I'm 20 minutes in. I have no idea what's happening.
You might have.
You gotta just let the first time wash over you, and then you go back like the next day, and then you can kind of figure it out.
You have to remember that you were a sleep-deprived father with a baby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
have a second child, and then don't sleep for a week, and then watch it at 4 a.m. That's the real... That's how the director wanted it to be experienced.
That's the connection between the two of you. That is really. Andy did tell me that we will be watching this film. I bought. There are several movies. I will let you know for sure. There's a lot of movies from the early '80s that were weird and that I did watch. Right, like I watched The Last Dragon. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Is that the
Kung Fu?
No,
it's,
I'm
the
thinking
Shogun of Harlem.
I'm thinking.
Oh no, Dragonheart's.
Yeah. No.
Yes, Andy also enjoyed Dragonheart. I watched it. It was a little slow for me.
Movie.
Yes.
Oh,
but
the Last Dragon.
The Last Dragon is about.
I've met Taima.
That's the Kung Fu guy, the Kung Fu kid.
Yeah.
It's essentially a black kung fu movie. He loves Bruce Lee to death.
Yes.
And he ends up saving a famous singer of the time whose name is escaping me. Someone's yelling it at their phone right now. And her name was like Victory or something. She had a very it was a noun. And as are all names, Jackie. They're all nouns. I'll be over here not remembering that.
I wasn't going to point it out, but yeah.
You would be alone in the Rangers of the Dork Forest not pointing it out. And that's why the Dork Forest, that's why I'm the king of the Dork Forest, because I would point it out to myself. So, and so he goes and there, but it's all super surreal, kind of like this, kind of like Buckaroo Banzai, where you end up in this parallel universe kind of thing where there's.
And he beats up all the bad guys.
Yeah, the Shogun of Harlem. But and then there's another one that is sort of pseudo-realistic, but also super weird. I think a lot of new drugs were coming into our lives in the early 80s.
Probably.
Did you ever see Repo Man with Emilio Estevez?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but nobody lives by a code anymore. Only repo men live by a code.
It's so important. It's so important to have a code, It just doesn't come up as much in media now as it did in previous decades.
Right. Young Guns. No, that actually wasn't weird at all. That was four very handsome young men thrown into a rock tumbler and given hats.
Yeah, I just turned 40, so I've been watching a lot of Westerns lately because I have to by law, and Young Guns keeps showing up as like the next thing that whatever streaming service wants me to watch, and I'm like, I don't know if I need to do this.
Did you watch Silverado?
No, I watched both versions of True Grit and then listened to the audiobook like a couple weeks ago. I've been going like
You're thorough. You're
old
real
John
thorough.
Wayne ones mostly.
Oh, John Wayne.
Well,
yeah.
I saw the like when the
Searchers
Coen
is a
Brothers
downer.
True Grit came out. Yeah, that was kind of a bummer. When the Coen Brothers True Grit came out, I saw it in theaters. I was like, oh, it's pretty good. I'm not really a Western guy, but I like this. And then I'd not seen the John Wayne one, and I'm like, oh yeah, let me give that a shot because I'll see like how it compares to this one. And they're both like pretty true to the book for having been made so far apart. Because then when I listened to the audiobook, I'm like, oh, like all the dialogue in both movies is just straight out of the book.
Right.
Like, when I saw the Coen Brothers one, it's like everybody's talking weird. I kind of like it, but it's like, why are they making them say things this way? It's like, oh, well, that's just how the book was.
Now, because you enjoyed Buckaroo Banzai, and Andy Ashcraft enjoys it a great deal, I have this to suggest, cowboy version-wise, is the TV show Deadwood. Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I watched, I think, like the first season when it was on. I was in college, and like we had HBO in the dorms and stuff.
It was hard to, it's hard
like
to get into it
pre-DVR,
initially.
so it was like if I was home, like
right.
It wasn't, I could do it now where it's like you can just sit and watch 40 episodes of a show in a row.
Well,
But
and remember,
at the time, it was like, yeah, I'm not always home Sunday nights or whatever.
Right, and you have to remember that it is a the dialogue is taken from Shakespeare. It's all it's trying to do like an iambic. That. Yes, so it might take a second, but it is darkly funny and very smart and beautifully shot. But yeah, I couldn't. It got too violent for me, and I enjoy action. I just don't enjoy like The Watchmen. I had to watch that from the doorway. The TV show The Watchmen. Yeah. I was like, no, that's good. I'm gonna go get a soda, and then I would read synopses.
Love, like, super gory stuff on screen or people barfing. Have you noticed the trend in recent years? How like it's just always people are just throwing up on screen, and I'm so mad about it every time it happens.
Right. There's no need for it. There's a couple of scenes in movies that I thoroughly enjoyed that I have to fast forward through them. And one of them is Bridesmaids, and one of them is The Heat. And it's the same guy. It's that Paul, it's not Paul Feig. He's the Marvel guy. Whatever. It's, again, just
Paul
send me an
Feig,
email.
Right? Kevin Feige.
Kevin Feige is the Marvel guy. Paul Feig is
Paul Feig's the
comedy guy. Yeah, Bridesmaid, and he also did The Heat, which was with Sandra Bullock and Melissa
McCarthy, right?
McCarthy, and it is that movie. I could dork out about that movie because that is one of my favorite movies of all. It was just on television last night, and I laugh till I cry with that movie. But there is a scene in it.
I've seen that one. I've seen Bridesmaid.
Well, The Heat is essentially it's a buddy movie, right? And there's on one hand, I could tell you about women buddy movies. That might be the only one. And but my other favorite buddy movie is Midnight Run with John Lithgow.
It's a good one.
And the guy from The Godfather. And who's trying to do comedy. De Niro. Yeah, that's it. De Niro and it was not John Lithgow. It was Grodin. Yeah, you're right. I'm in the part of show business that doesn't know who anybody is, and there's always a good 2 or 3 minutes when we're talking about TV and movies where that becomes desperately obvious. Rangers, I'm talking to Glen Tickle, and I'm going to let him.
There's a bunch of stuff I don't really. I like have a bunch of blind spots for stuff. Like I don't know anything about any Star Trek at all, and it's every time I tell people that they're like, "You seem like a Star Trek guy," and I was like.
Yeah.
I agree. I do. I've tried, and I just don't care.
Right.
It's not even it's boring space stuff. I will, like, watch a NASA live feed for 3 hours before I watch a single episode of Star Trek, the original series.
Right. Well, or I like Star Trek. I consider myself actually a bigger Star Trek nerd than Star Wars nerd, but I've actually seen more Star Wars than Star Trek, which is, I don't know why. But there's too much to consume, so it's fine. I'm not going to sweat it. But I will say this, Rangers. We only have
so much time on the earth.
Yes, I want everyone to know, because we only have about 5 minutes left, is that I'm talking with Glen Tickle. It's at Glen Tickle everywhere, glentickle.com. New album special coming out September 15th, Glen Tickle Against the World Crime League. And here's my next question. Is it also an album? I keep saying that.
It will be, yes. It'll be just on my YouTube channel initially because I want to drive everybody there for a while, and then the audio will be released as an album. I don't have a date for that yet. Kind of just whenever I want to do it because this is all me. Like I'm not
self-produced.
I started a label a couple years ago when I did my first album, so I get to do whatever I want. It's great. I highly recommend it. And
Yeah.
the audio version will be like a little bit longer because I trimmed some stuff out because I wanted to get it under an hour for the video because nobody wants to watch me talk for longer than that. But they'll probably listen to it in their car, I imagine, for an additional 10 minutes.
Right. I actually did it the opposite. The album was 55 minutes, and for my Horcrux album, and the video's actually an hour 5. It's got an extra 15 minutes on it for some reason.
I will probably also release a longer version of the video, because I'm putting it up on YouTube because it's the easiest way.
Oh yeah.
In the extended cut, I did rewrite the crawl from the beginning of Buckaroo Banzai, where instead of it being about him, it is about me. There's a ton of. I've had a couple. Yeah, I've had a couple people ask if the special is just a bunch of jokes about Buckaroo Banzai. I would love to do that, but no one else wants it. Like I've tried to do jokes about this, and I do jokes about like movies that I care about more than most people, but they're at least aware of Jurassic Park. You know, like
yes.
You don't need to have watched it as many times as I did. You know, there was a movie about dinosaurs. That's all I need from you. But it's the only way to do an hour of comedy about Buckaroo Banzai is like I need to get you guys in the theater before the show. Like we all have to watch it together, and then I'm going to talk about it for an hour afterwards. Right. But no one that I've pitched that to will let me do it.
Right, and I don't think that, like I do a lot of very obscure references that 9 people in the audience get, but I don't do an hour about Magic the Gathering, right? I mean, it's not, nobody, I just put out a 10-minute special.
I'll do it like a...
We're on a lag, so, yeah, you could. No, that's okay. It's I'm in a Hampton Inn in DC with Wi-Fi, so this is it's gonna be what it's gonna be. But I will say that my current special is 10 minutes, and it's only on my website, which is on YouTube essentially, and it's called Looking Back, and it's me telling 10 minutes of car jokes into the ass camera of a Mazda 6 in reverse. Like I'm just standing behind the camera with a lavalier mic telling jokes, and I've hired someone to keep her foot on the brake so it isn't a snuff film, and it's just the 10 minutes of car jokes that I remember, and then I ended on a story that my dad just told me about being carjacked, and I was like, there it is.
Perfect.
So you could do something like that with Buckaroo Banzai.
That should be 10 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. I've thought about it, but the times I've tried to like bring it up in sets, it's just I lose the audience immediately in a way that I have not experienced with any other topic. I have another special that I did about my younger brother dying in a car accident, and I talked about that for an hour more successfully than I've been able to get anyone to listen to me talk about Buckaroo Banzai.
Everyone has had horrible death and trauma in their lives.
Yeah,
not everyone.
We can relate to this actually, but we don't know why you keep talking about this thing.
Buckaroo Banzai.
I did a show at a senior center the other night, and I mentioned Buckaroo Banzai on stage, and like 7 people in the audience were like, "Oh, I love that movie." So I hung out for like 20 minutes after the show just talking to senior citizens about my favorite movie because nobody else wants to hear about it.
You were in the perfect. That's almost your demographic for this movie. I mean, because remember, it came out 40 years ago, and if you were 30, 40 years ago, and you watched it, you're 70. So that's your
my people.
Those are your people.
I'm going to do a senior center tour of America talking about Buckaroo Banzai.
Possible. Very, very possible. My friend Karen Rontowski did, she did, what was it, 16 weeks? It was too many weeks of senior centers.
It's a lot of weeks.
All through Florida.
Wow.
But it was like 3 months of work. And by the end of it, she literally had bought a joke book.
They love it. They would love if
Karen,
I have a bit where I talk about trying to teach preschool kids knock knock jokes, and I could have just done the knock knock jokes. Like, didn't need the elaborate setup or the fun story about it. If I just did the knock knock jokes, they would have had a great time.
Right, they would have ate it up. I tell you. I have to say that I love that I want to see this movie because I currently have a new favorite movie that they're like, that can't be your favorite movie. Do you get that? Where you're like, well, what about Casablanca? What about, you know, the...
Especially because I have a film degree, so like I've seen a lot of movies. And for this late in the game to be like, no, actually, I know... Look, we all love The Princess Bride. You know, it's up there for sure. But what if it's this one? What if it's this movie from 1984 that most people have never heard of, and those who have don't like it at all? Like, what if that's the best one?
Right. It's I just bought not Starman. I like Starman. Came out, I think,
Starman's
the same
pretty
year.
good.
Yeah, but I like the one where the kid that looks like Matthew Broderick plays a video game, and then Robert Preston is in it.
Last Starfighter.
I just bought that movie because I loved it so.
That's a good
that
one.
Also, not a great movie, but a great movie.
No. Yeah, like it's similar to Buckaroo. It's like, yeah, I mean, you're trying to make a movie in the mid 80s with not enough money to really do what you're trying to do.
Yeah, you don't have the tech.
So you're gonna get what you get.
Okay, so here's my current favorite movie of all time right now. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle.
Okay. Is that the
Rock?
first? That's the first
The
Rock
Rock
one or the second?
That's the first
one?
Rock one. The first Rock one.
Okay. I saw that one.
It changed my life. I've bought it 3 times now. I should just buy
What
it.
about it?
I've rented it. It is a delight, is what it is. I
remember liking it more than I was expecting to when I saw a Rock
I went in
Jumanji
with
movie.
nothing. And it genuinely blew my mind. And I was like, because I love The Rock. I like Jack Black a lot. The woman who played Nebula, Kieran Gillen, whose name is exactly like a guy who writes
my daughter
comic
after
books.
her Doctor Who character.
Oh, right. She was also sidekick on Doctor Who.
Yeah. She's Amelia Pond.
Oh, there you go. And so I'm going to watch Buckaroo Banzai. I recommend you watch Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle again, because it's...
I'll give it another shot. I'll make that deal.
It's got everything. It's got everything going for it right now. And I'm on board. Glen Tickle, this has been a delight. Thank you for being the first person to try this new interface.
Yeah. I hope it worked out.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to hit stop. And let me tell the Rangers of the Dork Forest, you guys, you know the rules out there. Be good to each other. Take care of each other. What is it? Yeah, take care of each other. That's it.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat. My hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?